Hello and welcome to the endoscopic topic. My name is Jasmine, and this week we're going to be discussing endoscopes and some of those common problems that arise in healthcare facilities across the United States. Our goal here is just to educate everybody, and hopefully you guys can take something back to your facility with you, and we can help reduce some of those common errors that occur with endoscopes, because ultimately our goal here is that patients always have the best quality of care at all times. And ensuring that everybody has clean endoscopes is very important. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Just so that we're all on the same page about what an endoscope is, I do have an explanation of the term endoscope from Medline's website. Some of you may know them. They're a common medical supplier. On their website, it's stated that an endoscope is a medical device with a light attached. It is used to look inside the body cavity or organ. The scope is inserted through a natural opening, such as the mouth during a bronchoscopy or the rectum for a sigmoidoscopy. A medical procedure using any type of endoscope is called an endoscopy. And that is from their website back in 2021. Endoscopic exams are critical to our patients' health, as these unique procedures allow doctors to visually examine medical problems going on inside of the patient's body without any unnecessary traumatic surgeries, like there is no cutting that would occur with an endoscope. Endoscopic exams are essentially knife-free. Doctors can examine issues such as heartburn, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, difficulty swallowing, gastrointestinal issues, bleeding, polyps, and much more. And it can also be utilized for things like biopsies and other small procedures. Now, one big problem that we do see with endoscopes, especially because endoscopes are a medical device that are reprocessable and they are used between patients. So it's really important that we are reducing any cross-contamination between those patients. If an endoscope is used on a patient, it's essential that the endoscope is decontaminated and sterilized thoroughly between patients and before sending it on to the next procedure. Especially because proving how sterile an endoscope really is very difficult. A lot of endoscopes are very long and they have long lumens that cannot be disassembled for cleaning and decontamination, so it's hard to prove that you really have cleaned the entire thing properly and that you're not passing on contaminants from one patient to the next. The goal of any sterile processing or essential supply department should be to make sure that you are taking all of the necessary steps to prove that each endoscope, laparoscope, arthroscope is decontaminated and sterilized properly at the highest standard every single time. It's very important for the health and safety of all of your patients and also yourself and your coworkers, because if you're giving a dirty endoscope to a doctor or to a surgical tech, you're putting them at risk as well, because you're not sure exactly what the previous patient had. But we do have some tips to help reduce endoscope cross-contamination between patients. The first step in ensuring that an endoscope is properly decontaminated is making sure that in the OR or procedure room, if that's what your facility has, that the endoscope is being wiped down throughout the procedure, and also that before being brought to the sterile processing department, the endoscope has any gross soil debris removed, and then also brought to the sterile processing department within 60 minutes of the procedure. Very important, within 60 minutes. Once inside the sterile processing department, we do have some steps for you to follow to make sure that the decontamination is complete. We found some simple steps on TotalScopeInc.com. So your first step inside the sterile processing department is going to be perform a dry leak test. A dry leak test, if you don't know, which I hope that you do, but if you do not, a dry leak test is performed to make sure that there are no leaks in the endoscope, in the insulation, and that there's no bubbles being left behind. If for whatever reason your endoscope that you're working with fails a dry leak test, it's important to not reprocess the scope for the next patient, but to clean it and decontaminate it for repair or being sent out of the facility. Once you have an endoscope that passes the dry leak test, your next steps are going to be manually brush and flush the lumens. And then it's important to make sure right here that we are choosing the correct brush size according to the manufacturer's IFUs. I hope that you know what IFUs are, but if you don't, those are instructions for use written by the manufacturer of that device. And also an important note when talking about manufacturing IFUs, the manufacturers of all of these endoscopes, they have different specifications for their machines. So please make sure that you are using the correct IFUs for the actual machine that you are working with, especially if your facility has more than one manufacturer. All right, then the next step after the manual brush and flush would to be rinse and dry. It's important to make sure that the endoscope is dry, especially before the disinfecting process, because extra fluids will just dilute any chemicals that you'd be working with. Okay, and then after that we are going to flush the inside of the endoscope with alcohol. Alcohol inside the scope is going to disinfect and then also help with the drying process. And then finally, we're just going to store the endoscope and make sure that we are properly documenting everything for the next sterile processor and then for any future cases or any issues that arise in the future. Like I said, it's very important to remember that all the manufacturers of endoscopes, they have different specifications for their products. So you need to make sure that you are always following the correct manufacturer's IFUs. Again, if you don't know what IFUs are, there are instructions for use. Instructions for use are always available to you in your sterile processing department. If you do not know where they are, please talk to your manager because they are available to you, I promise you. This is especially true, again, when talking about brush sizes. You want to make sure that you're using the correct brush size, especially when you're working with the inside lumen of the endoscope, because if you have a brush size that is too small for the endoscope, then the brush will not be touching all of the sides of the lumen inside, and you're not going to be cleaning it. So you want to make sure that you are using the correct brush size when and a clean brush as well. Always use a clean new brush, and the correct size when cleaning any lumen, but especially an endoscope. Alright, well, if you do have any questions, please feel free to let us know. But just some reminders from the podcast. It's important that your first step of endoscope cleaning does begin in the operating room, and that we are removing that, first layer of debris in the operating room. Also, many endoscopes cannot be fully disassembled for cleaning or decontamination process, so make sure that when you are cleaning the inside with brushes that you're being thorough and that you're using the correct brush size. Always follow the manufacturer's IFUs for that specific endoscope, and always ask for a second or third or fourth opinion. If you're not sure that you are cleaning endoscopes correctly, somebody with more experience than you, they'll definitely help you out. And remember that everyone's goal here is just to make sure that patients all have clean endoscopes and laparoscopes and arthroscopes. And honestly, any surgical supplies or medical supplies, you just want to make sure that it's clean. So if you ever feel like you're not doing something right, ask somebody, ask your director, ask your manager, ask someone who's worked in the department for a lot more years than you have, because they'd be happy to help you, I promise. And then if you wanted to check out any, alright, and then if you did want to check out any of my references, I do have them here available on this page. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Have a good one.